So this is an exciting portion of the show. I'm going to be doing an interview now with my good friend David Gregory, who directed me in Plague Town, which is a horror cult classic. Did anyone see it? It was an amazing experience. He cast it in New York, and I remember there was like a month of waiting to see if I got it, and when I got it, it was like the most exciting thing ever, and we've been friends ever since. And he's the one who told me, if you want to do TV film, you got to move to LA, and I did. And I can't believe it's been 10 years, actually, I think to this day or this week, that we've shot Plague Town. So, David Gregory also owns Severn Films. They produce a ton of films, and he also directed Theater Bazaar and Lost Soul, which you can watch on Netflix. It's an amazing documentary. So please welcome David Gregory. Grab the mic and let me give you this. Well, actually, do you want to grab this stool behind you? Do you mind?
Yes. So you're actually doing a filmmaker Q&A in the middle of a comedy show?
Yes!
Okay.
Because it's whatever I want to do.
Smashing.
Isn't that why you do films? You get to do whatever you want?
Absolutely. And this is another fake English accent up on the stage.
Yeah, he's just playing a character here. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. It's nice to see you.
This is really the only way that we get to hang out. So
Yes.
I had to design the whole show around you just so we could see each other.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's really all this is. It's just an excuse to catch up with my friend.
Yeah.
You guys are going to witness that. But anyway, how have you been? You've been really busy.
Yeah.
And working, slaving away on a million projects.
Yes.
And do you want to just tell them a little bit about what you've been up to and tell them about Severn Films and everything?
Yeah. I run a label which releases horror and exploitation movies, mainly from the 70s and 80s, but we make some of our own as well. And Lost Soul being the last one that people noticed.
And tell them a little bit about Lost Soul.
Lost Soul is about the making of the island of Dr. Moreau, which was one of the most disastrous movie-making experiences of all time. A movie with Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer, and the original director was fired a couple of days into the shooting of the film, and he ended up sneaking back onto the movie dressed as a beast person, and everybody went mad when it was shot in the jungles of Australia, and it's quite a wild story.
And this guy is such a crazy person.
Yes.
I mean, he's living in his own universe. Do you think he's insane?
No, he just lives in a different time. I mean, we just released another documentary of his. He lives in a place called Montségur in France, where they actually think that the Holy Grail is buried. That's why he went there originally. And then I've been to visit him there, and there are a lot of people who think they're the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene, and they think that there's a UFO under a mountain. And it's a very beautiful part of France, but it's about 100 people live there, and they're all kind of crazy.
Including him.
Yeah, but people just walk. I mean, he looks like somebody who's out of a spaghetti western. He wears a dark hat and hasn't bathed in like 30 years. And people, whenever we're out at dinner, people just walk up to him and say things like, you know something. And he's like, yeah, yes, I do. And then they'll look at me and they'll just say, yeah, you're just normal.
And after you made that film, did you know it was going to be such a success? Because you kind of made it by accident, right? You told me you started interviewing him, and then suddenly you were like, oh, there's a film here.
Yeah, because we put out one of his earlier movies, which was a big success back when it came out, called Hardware, which was Miramax's first big success. And so he was a success by accident, and then he was just kind of brought to Hollywood to make The Island of Dr. Moreau, and then that was a huge failure, and then he just disappeared into the wilderness for years. And we brought that film out on Blu-ray, and also made the Theater Bazaar with him as well, which was an anthology film with several directors. And so at that point I was just at his house, and I said, so what actually happened on the island of Dr. Moreau? There's all these rumors about you sneaking back to set in like a beast costume and things like that. And he was just like, well, how long have you got? And I just started filming, and the stories just got wilder and wilder, and then I decided to, you know, stop interviewing the other people because his stories were so insane that it seemed like they couldn't be possible. But everybody else had insane stories to tell about the shooting of that film as well. The ones who would speak to us, Val Kilmer was not one of them, because a lot of the stories were about him.
They all spoke about him, though, and what a nightmare he was.
Yeah, he was difficult.
And then Marlon Brando was just kind of like making fun of the film the whole time.
Yeah,
right?
so some people loved Marlon Brando because of the way he was making fun of the filmmaking process, and he came up with the idea of the mini-me, which was basically having the shortest guy in the world be his assistant on the film, which he just thought was wonderful, and the filmmakers were like, that's not in the script at all. But he's like, well, I'm Marlon Brando, I'm going to do whatever I want. And in fact, he said, and he even told his assistant, in this scene I'm going to put a bucket of ice on my head, and Farouza Balk has to put ice in this bucket of ice on my head, and just watch, nobody will tell me not to do it. And sure enough, there's a whole scene in the movie. They pretty much use every foot of footage that they got of Marlon Brando when they finally got him on the set, because that's all they had that they could use. But if anybody remembers that movie, the only things they remember about it are the mini-me guy and the ice bucket on the head, and the fact that he comes in wearing whiteface at the beginning, like completely caked in whiteface.
All over his face.
Yeah, which was something that him and Richard talked about the fact that the ozone layer is completely gone. But after Richard was fired, Marlon was like, well, these people aren't taking this seriously, so therefore I'm not even going to tell them why I'm in whiteface. This is just the way I'm going to do it.
Was he the reason that Richard was the director in the first place? Somebody chose him, right?
Yeah, he had to, it was Richard's project, but when he convinced Marlon Brando that he was the right man for the job, Marlon Brando thought that, okay, I'm going to do this because this guy's really into this project. And so then when they fired him, Marlon was like, okay, these people are going to get what's coming to them.
Yeah, and they sure did. You guys, if you haven't seen the movie, I really, really recommend it. I watched it twice. I loved it. You did such a good job. Like, I didn't know anything about the story. I didn't know anything about the Dr. Moreau film. So it's really educational and really interesting. So you guys should definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. And well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, and do you want to tell them a little bit about Plague Town, since that's how we met?
That's how we met, like 10 years ago, to pretty much to the day we started shooting.
To the day?
I actually texted Jocelyn and Lindsay, who were also in the film, just to make sure that I had my timing right, and they said it was pretty much around this time.
So crazy.
Yeah, and yeah, you say it wasn't your first film, but I remember at the beginning you were like completely terrified that we were actually not really making a film.
Yeah, well, because my first film was a reality show, where I found out later that it was a reality show. All these things went wrong, kind of like the Dr. Moreau story, but in the modern life. And people kept getting injured. I had to wear a purple wig and dress in all gold, like be painted and head to toe gold. And I won't do the monologue, but it was like, my neurotransmodulators need remagnetified, my remagnetulators need neurotransmognified, I am frightened overtly, discombobulated, 7 sons of swimming, 6 geese length, 5, 4 score must recalibrate my tertiary deployment, synthetic cloids with cortexual ionic, neo-exportation input, replicators.
It was a science fiction movie.
I was going to do it, I really wasn't, but then I just kept coming. Yeah, it was like a sci-fi, and they gave me that monologue because they didn't think I would learn it. And then I did learn it, and they were like, what the fuck? But anyway, so that was my first experience, and then at the end of filming it, they were like, you're not in a film, you're in a reality TV show, and then it went on AMC, and it was called Film Fakers. So I almost got fired from his movie because they were doing all this behind-the-scenes footage, and I was like, what's going on? Why are you filming me?
Understandably, afterwards. I mean, that's just a horrible, horrible thing to do. Like, didn't they have to refilm the ending of the show with you on Film Fakers because you were like,
because I cried.
What? Yeah, and like, no, it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be funny. You're like, I tried really fucking hard on this film, and you basically just told me it was all fake.
The weird thing about, did I tell you how? Then later on, I just did a show on Fox called Punchline, same producers.
Did you punch them?
They were scared, like they were like, hi, are we good? And I was like, And then they told me they felt bad that they tricked me.
Yeah, quite right. Well, the show didn't even get picked up, right? So it was like just...
No, it did.
Oh, it did?
It aired, yeah.
Because I would have been like, wow, that's just really mean. I guess a lot of reality TV is kind of mean. So.
But let's talk about Plague Town.
Yeah,
it was such an amazing experience.
Yes.
It was my first big film after that. And you were so great to work with, and I still remember it as a really magical time.
It was,
so, do you want to talk a little bit about it? Was it your first big...
It was my first feature that I directed, Yeah, and so, it was basically a story about an Irish village of homicidal, deformed children, and we couldn't afford to shoot in Ireland, so we shot in Connecticut, and we never actually named an island in the script. And then we just got we got a weird old farmhouse in Connecticut, which we called the Black Lodge, which we all kind of lived at, and the actors actually, and some of the crew lived at a hotel down the road, right?
Yeah.
And so you guys would come back from shooting covered in blood and just go to breakfast where all the families were like, what's the matter with these people?
Yeah, we go to breakfast in the blood, go to the buffet breakfast.
Yeah, but no, it was fabulous. It was I think 22 days of shooting, and about 18 of them were nights with lots of people who were I wouldn't go as far as to say they were children. There was only a couple who were like 7 and 8, but most of them were kind of early teens.
Yeah.
But the fact that all the parents were just so into the idea that we were doing a movie in this part of Connecticut, they didn't seem to be too bothered that they were probably going to miss school the next day, you know, to be dressed up and basically chop up and beat up adults.
And where are they now?
I don't know, probably, actually, that's a good question.
College.
In college or in psychiatric wards.
Yeah.
No, actually, the girl who played Rosemary, the main girl, is definitely in college. I know that because we're Facebook friends.
Oh, there you go. Benefits of Facebook. And what are you working on now? Do you have anything new coming up? Or?
Yeah, I'm making a couple of other documentaries, actually. I mean, we released about 3 movies a month on the label, but they're other people's movies.
But that's cool because you can like kind of resuscitate people's careers sometimes.
Well, you never know. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, it's like a second round.
Yes, no, exactly. And they're often movies that people are still fond of, or they're ones that we kind of dig out that haven't had the respect that they deserve, and sort of do a documentary about them for the documentary for the disc, and then restore them and all that business, and give them a nice presentation. But then I'm doing a documentary about a filmmaker called Al Adamson, who made classics like Satan's Sadists and Blood of Dracula's Castle, and he ended up being murdered by his handyman and buried underneath his jacuzzi in Palm Desert.
What?
And so there's like a whole third act of this story, which is really kind of, it's all fun and games and filming low-budget movies in the desert. And he started the careers of people like Vilmos Zsigmond, and he would use lots of old Hollywood actors like John Carradine in his movies when they were affordable, and Lon Chaney Jr. in their last movies. So he had an interesting career, and then he retired, and then he disappeared, and then it turned out that he'd been buried underneath his jacuzzi by his handyman, who was actually pretending to be him. He'd basically tried to steal his identity, and he was like, this guy's such a recluse and nobody's going to remember him, that this guy basically tried to assume his identity and thought nobody would notice.
Oh my God, it's creepy. Wow, so you like films about people turning into other things. I was trying to find a theme between them. Do you want to take one question before we wrap it up?
If there is one.
Any questions?
No? All right.
Are you sure? This is the one time we've got David Gregory here. Anything about horror films? Yes.
I made a horror film for film school. I'm a DFA graduate, but what do you recommend for me, and how do I crew up with you?
Well, I mean, what do I recommend? Basically, now you've just got to go out and start shooting. I mean, that's the way to do it. There's the positive is that it's very easy to make a film now because equipment is so much cheaper than it was. We don't have to actually shoot on film. The bad side of that is that there's now 1 million movies being made, so there's a lot to actually make your project kind of rise above the others. So I would say make it good.
What was your first film you ever made in college? Didn't you get some accolades for it?
My first movie was when I was 8 years old. I made a movie called It Came from the Grave with a friend of mine.
8-year-old.
Yeah. Well, we went to this really cool kind of crumbling church just outside of Nottingham, where I'm from, and this friend of mine and me were really into kind of old horror movies and stuff like that, and his reluctant sister kind of came along. We put kind of the blood paint all over her. She was the victim, unfortunately. But that was the first, and then I made several kind of Super 8 movies after that, and then the first sort of proper one that I made was in college, and it was a film called Scathed, which featured the Andy Warhol superstar Holly Woodlawn, who recently passed away. Was it that recent? Maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
But basically it was an Andy Warhol transvestite, whereas at the college that I was at, they were very kind of opposed to the fact that we did this, because we weren't supposed to kind of reach outside the school to be dealing with that kind of element.
Rebel.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, you guys check out Lost Soul, and where can they watch Plague Town if they want to watch that?
You know, Plague Town is actually kind of lost in the ether, because basically the company we made it for fucking hated it, and so they moved on to the next films, and like those ones were much more successful. But I'm actually organising with them now to actually get it back off them, so that we can release it on my label.
Yes.
So therefore we can do a 10th anniversary edition.
Oh, that would be great.
Nice. Yes.
And then they can see it. Well, thanks so much for being here,
Thank
David.
you for having me.